classmates who were unable to be here live today. So here's our virtual class expectations we view at the beginning of each class. You all do a wonderful job with these. So I will move on to our icebreaker question today, which is, one moment. There, okay. If you could have your own late night talk show, who would you invite as your first guest and why? As you're thinking of an example here, I'll just kind of go over some of mine. So I put Lin-Manuel Miranda because I really like Hamilton and Moana. So I think it'd be really cool to meet him. I like Pedro Pascal a lot. I think he's in some really good shows. The Last of Us on HBO Max is something I've been watching lately. This Is Us is my all-time favorite TV show, and I would love to meet like Milo Ventimiglia, Mandy Moore, Sterling K. Brown. They'd be some pretty cool people to meet. And then for my musical guest, I would have Bruno Mars because I love his music. So yeah, take a little bit of time to think about it. It doesn't have to be like a celebrity or anyone famous. It can be somebody like in your life, or it could be somebody who, like a historical figure who is no longer here with us today. So kind of up to you. Think of it as if you could invite anybody to have a convo with them or interview them, who would you pick? Okay, we got our first one here, Michael Jackson. I remember when he died too. I was probably not much older than you guys. I think I was like 13 or 14 when he died, so late middle school, early high school, probably late middle school. Alex Morgan, yay! A U.S. women's soccer team player. She's awesome. Her story's really cool. She didn't start playing soccer until later, compared to a lot of her teammates. She's a good role model for U.S. women's soccer. Okay, another minute here to wrap up your thoughts. Daniel Radcliffe, staying on the Harry Potter theme. That's awesome. Stephen Curry. Okay. Yeah, he seems pretty neat. I like watching Holy Moly, and I know that he is like on it occasionally, besides his basketball career. Okay, sweet. Well, thank you everyone here for sharing today. So we will move on to our agenda for the day. So we just did our icebreaker question, and then I'm going to go over some assignment reminders, and then we're going to complete a lesson here in class together, and then any questions you have at the end. So if you are ready to start, just give me a thumbs up or an emoji, or write in the chat that you're ready to go. Thank you, Rose and Dylan. Yay, awesome. Okay, so assignment reminders here. If you have late assignments, you can still turn them in. So email Miss G anytime you submit late assignments, but you need to, I emphasize this right here, 100,000% email me if it is an Edpuzzle or non-Google Docs or Slides assignment. So think something like Flip or Edpuzzle, or just some of the other things that we might do that are not on a Google Slides or a Google Doc. I don't receive notifications for these, so I will not know to go back unless you tell me. So that is the assignment reminders, just because we haven't had a class connect in a while. So I just wanted to go over those. Do those make sense, or do you have any questions before we move on to our assignment for the day? Thanks, Rose. Yay. Perfect. Okay, so we'll get started here on our assignment. I'll show you where to go to get to the assignment. So the assignment is called Lesson 14.02, Minnesota in World War I. And then you're going to go to our Minnesota Studies page. And then it is in the quarter 4, week 4 number folder, World War I. And then it is right here. Does anybody have any questions on how to get there? And then just let me know in the chat when you're on the assignment. Okay. I see 2, 3 so far. So that says I'm in. I'll wait just a little bit longer here. A few more. Okay, well, we're waiting just a little bit longer. Does anybody want to read the directions out loud for the class? Sure, Rose, you can start. You can read the whole page. For slide number 2.
Lesson 14.02, Minnesota and World War I Directions. Number 1, watch the YouTube video on slide number 3 and write 2 to 3 sentences about what you know about World War I or would like to know about it via Jamboard. 2, view the images and read the paragraphs on slides number 4 to 7. Answer the questions below each image.
Perfect. Thank you, Rose. So we're going to go to slide number 3 here. So our first question, I'm going to share the Jamboard link too. Okay, so that is in the chat. So you should be able to get on the Jamboard. You want to make sure everybody has editing access, which you do now. Okay, so the question is, what do you know about World War I, or what would you like to know about it? You will post your response on the Jamboard and sign off with your first name and last initial. And then I shared the link within the chat. Example, I would like to learn more about the specific battles that took place. Also, what did life look like back home in the US for those not in the war? Also, I did visit the World War I Museum back in 2019 with my mom, so I have been there before. It's a pretty cool place. Okay, so for the Jamboard, you're gonna make a sticky note. So you're gonna see on the left-hand side here, there's these things right here, and you're gonna pick a sticky note, and then you're gonna type out your response, and it should look somewhat like this then. So I'll give you some time to work on this here, probably a minute, minute and a half, maybe 2. Oops, I was on mute. Okay, thank you, Dylan, for your response here. I would like to know where most of the action was during the war. Also, I would like to know what you would do if you're not in the war for shelter. Good questions. Oh, okay, so we got some more here. I would like to know about um, what important role did Minnesota play in the World War I, which we're going to learn about here right now. I also know that Hitler caused the war to happen. Rose M. Oops, sorry, wrong Rose. Thank you, Rose, for fixing that. I saw the R, so I thought it was the other Rose. My apologies. Oh, she's not even here today. My definite apologies. I would like to learn about the environment at the time and how the war affected people. I would also like to know why it was called World War I. I would want to learn on what weapons they used in World War I. I also want to know why the people not fighting for Germany get treated poorly. Okay, perfect. Yay. Okay, looks like everybody has posted their sticky note, which is perfect. So we are gonna move on here to back to the assignment and then go to slide number 4. And then once you are on slide number 4, let me know you're ready to go. Oh, you are right. I didn't pause to notice that. You are correct. Yes, he is World War II, not World War I. Thank you for bringing that up to the class's attention. I was just reading them out loud. I didn't take the time to like sit and process. So I appreciate bringing that up. Okay, and then just let me know when you're on slide number 4, ready to go. Thank you. And Dylan. Awesome. So when we're all ready here, I'm going to read the first one, and then I'll have a volunteer read the second one right here. And then when we find the answer to the question, I'm going to highlight it so that we have it available, and then I'll type it out as well. And then I'll give everyone access to look at this slide too. Okay. On April 12th, 1917, President Woodrow Wilson called upon Americans on the home front to help fight what would become known as World War I. In response, many Minnesotans turned to backyard gardening to increase their food supply. Homegrown vegetables filled pantries and stomachs and allowed citizen soldiers to conserve wheat, meat, sugar, and fats that were essential for U.S. troops and their European allies. So that's the background of getting backyard gardening started. And what we're going to learn about here is the Liberty Gardens. So would anybody like to read this one right here? Yep, Rose, you can start.
Liberty Gardens, as homegrown plots became known in 1918, were a crucial part of food conservation efforts. Since vegetables could take the place of meat and wheat-based dishes, the group that coordinated the state's war efforts, the Minnesota Commission of Public Safety, MCPS, wrote in their newsletter that flying a flag at the front of the house would mean little for the war effort unless there was a garden in the backyard.
Okay, so as Miss G highlights some of these things right here, why do we think that Liberty Gardens were important? Like, what impact did they have on the war effort? And then you can write in the chat too. Okay, so what impact do we think that they had on the war effort? Yeah, Rose.
That it was part of a crucial part of food conservation efforts.
Oops, I spelled critical wrong. Okay, so Liberty Gardens were critical to food conservation efforts and allowed Minnesotans back home to directly impact and help soldiers overseas. What do we think? Okay, awesome. I'll put that in the chat. Okay, so now we are on slide number 5. Let me know when you're ready to start that one. Okay. And then can I have a volunteer to read one of the paragraphs? I can read the other two, but I would love a student volunteer for one of the paragraphs.
I can.
Okay, sweet. Do you have a preference on which one you read?
I can do the first one.
Okay, awesome. Thanks, Bobby.
Since
Brady?
its founding in 1859, The Minnesota State Fair had been an essential yearly tradition in the agriculture state. However, after the United States entered World War I in 1917, the fair took an entirely new significance. Organizers reframed the event as food training camp that showed Minnesotans how to produce and conserve resources vital to the Allied war effort.
Sweet, thank you. So, especially back in the early 1900s, the state of Minnesota was big into agriculture. So, the Minnesota State Fair kind of flexed its role and reframed the event so that it could be this food training camp where people could learn about how to make different produce, how to like grow it, and how to conserve efforts and resources related to the war front. So I'll start highlighting here. Okay, I'll read 2 and 3 here. So classes in gardening, canning, and preservation offered fair attendees ways to help raise the state's food production. Children were encouraged to form clubs to raise everything from potatoes to chickens. Cooking demonstrations helped home cooks cope with the schedule of increasing wheatless and meatless meals. The fair also highlighted new fashions and sewing techniques that wasted less fabric. Organizers replaced fancy sewing contests with more utilitarian ones. The Red Cross, YMCA, and YWCA held outreach activities at the fair, all emphasizing how men, women, and children could support the troops. Booths collected money for Liberty loans, and stalls displayed handicraft projects by disabled veterans. Okay. Does anybody want to tell the class how they think the fairgrounds affected the war effort? You can just like raise your hand and like speak out loud, and then that way it doesn't take as long to type, and then I can focus on the typing. Or if you just want to put in the chat one way in which they helped, and then I can summarize all of them for us. Okay, so I see our first response here. The Minnesota State Fair had been a yearly tradition. Yep. So what did they do to impact, like what did they do shifting away from their traditional format? What did they do to help the war instead? And then you can look at some of the highlights that I have here, and then we'll put 3 different examples down here. I'll just put the first one. I'm going to say held a food training camp. So I said one of the things they did was held a food training camp to show Minnesotans how to grow different produce and conserve resources vital to the war effort. What else did they do at the fair? We could talk about the different outreach activities, how to create new fashion pieces, the different classes they offered, or the cooking demonstrations, or the booths that collected money for the Liberty loans. Which one should we talk about? Oh, thank you. So highlighted new fashions and sewing techniques that did not waste fabric. Okay, and then for the third and final one here, I'm gonna say okay, perfect. Thank you, Rose. I'm gonna copy and paste this over. Okay, and then let me know when you're ready to move on to slide number 6. And then we just have 6 and 7, and then we are done for the day. Thank you so much for staying late. We'll try to finish this up in the next 5 minutes to get you going off pretty soon. Okay, looks like we have some I'm readies. Awesome. So the 16th Battalion. During World War I, African American Minnesotans wanted to serve their state and their nation. Historically, however, the U.S. military had been racist in its recruiting. It allowed African Americans to serve only in segregated units. Facing this institutional racism, the African American community of Minnesota asked Governor J.A.A. Burnquist to form an all African American battalion of the Minnesota Home Guard. The 16th Battalion became the first Minnesota recruited African American military unit in state history. Minnesota Home Guard units followed the racist recruiting policies of the U.S. military. Still, African American men saw the Home Guard as an opportunity. A leader in the community called Clarence Wigington petitioned Governor Burnquist to form an all African American battalion of the Home Guard. In the racist climate that prevailed, a separate but equal unit was the most feasible option. On April 20th, 1918, nearly a year after the creation of the Home Guard, the all African American 16th Battalion was ordered to form. Okay, I'm gonna copy and paste that there in the chat for you. And then we will move on to slide number 7. Okay, and then let me know when we're ready to move on to slide number 7. Okay. And then there are 2 paragraphs here. I will read one, and then do we have a volunteer for one of the other ones? Okay, Rose, perfect. Do you want to read the first or the second one?
I'm going to read the first one.
Okay, awesome. I think you're ready to get started.
After the United States earned World War I in 1917, Minnesota women, like Americans across the nation, were called to contribute to the war effort. Though some went to Europe and served as nurses, drivers, and aid workers on the battlefields, many more participated on home front. They took on new jobs, conserved vital resources, and joined volunteer organizations. At the same time, they struggled to come to terms with conflicting ideals, patriotism,
Patriotism?
loyalty, and what it meant to be an American.
Okay. Thank you, Rose. Participation on the home front took many forms. Some women worked in offices and factories to replace men who had enlisted. Schools and colleges across Minnesota offered them a variety of vocational programs, including training courses in nursing and clerical jobs. While Minnesota women did not enter factory work at the same rate as women in other parts of the country, they did more agricultural labor. In summers of 1917 and 1918, women did paid and volunteered work in farm fields across the state. Okay. Okay. This one I kind of went quick because I know we're running over, so I just wanted to get this one done as quickly as possible for us. Where is that not? Having some difficulties here with. There we go. Okay, so Minnesotan women took important roles within the war effort both at home and overseas. Some roles included serving as nurses, drivers, and workers on the battlefield in Europe. Back home, they took on new roles such as office workers, factory laborers, and agricultural workers on the farm fields across the state. So once you finish copy and pasting this one to the document, you are good to submit the assignment. If there are some parts that you miss, you can always go back and reference this, and you have a week to get it turned in anyways. So I'm going to end the recording here.